we are having a lot of high winds in my location and the power's been going in and out, I will scramble as quickly as I can to beat the like 4 minutes or something they give you if we lose connection. So stay in the room. I will jump back on. It's been an on-off kind of thing. So just FYI, if you get concerned, I will do my best to get back on, and let's hope all of this works perfectly, including Mother Nature of all things. So hello to all of you this afternoon. Welcome to my presentation for the biodiversity teach-in. I'd first like to tell the Elgin High School students thank you and congratulations. These are amazing kids that have been able to, with the help of their teacher, do this incredible biodiversity teach-in. My name is Peggy Doty. I actually work for the University of Illinois Extension, and I am located in the northern part of the state. I'm sitting, to give it a place perspective, I'm sitting within a few minutes of Northern Illinois University in DeKalb and less than an hour from Wisconsin, just to give you an idea of my location. I studied wildlife management in my first degree, and I have a huge interest in the relationship of people to wildlife. And I have a hope that you'll walk away with 3 major things today. So as it goes across the board in information, one, I'm hoping that you'll realize everybody has a set of their own wildlife values that is identifiable by their personal experiences or beliefs. And in order to communicate with each other regarding large predators and wildlife in general, we have to honor and validate everyone's wildlife values. I think the biggest mistake we make when discussing topics with any kind of controversy or concern on one side or the other is that we forget we can walk away and agree to disagree. And it's not all about making sure that when something's done being discussed that we're all on one side of the table. Secondly, that biodiversity is at its best when all the parts of the food chain are in place and balanced. It may look like it's functioning, but it's always at its best when all the parts and pieces are there. For an example, I live in Northern Illinois, but it's being played out. What I'm going to use is Northern Illinois with these large predators that keep coming into our area, but this is being played out in many places. For instance, the Mexican wolves that are being reintroduced in the Southwest in Arizona and New Mexico that used to range over to Texas and down into northern Mexico, their numbers aren't as high as one of the examples I'm going to give you, but it's the same thing. They pulled out the last remaining, they've done a breeding program, and they're slowly putting them back in because without them, the biodiversity is compromised. So that number 2 was that biodiversity is at its best when all the parts of the food chain are in place and balanced. And finally, very importantly, that we are socially and ultimately, we as all people, no matter how old you are responsible. We are the wildlife managers today. We have responsibilities not to look at them as people, not to give them human traits. For you older folks in the crowd, anthropomorphize. We have to not do that. And we have to appreciate them, but keep them at arm's length and farther. So this little presentation is different for me. I'm used to reading faces. So I talk with my hands. See, this is going on. But I'm very excited to bring this to you. So please note on the first slide, if you are an instructor and we may run out of time for questions, please feel free to write down my email right there on that first slide at the bottom. It's psdoty@illinois.edu. If we run out of time, by all means, feel free to contact me, send your student questions, or if you just want to tell me about your experiences, that would be fine too. We may not have time for all that today. Matter of fact, I have an agenda. So before you start getting excited about questions, I might answer those questions in the presentation. The program agenda is in front of you. We're going to talk about historically. Again, I'm using Northern Illinois as an example. This happens in many different ways, and we're actually going to talk about Yellowstone a little bit as well. We're going to talk about the description of what makes a predator an apex predator. There's a difference. Overview on human values. That's one of the most important pieces I was talking about. And as it pertains to potential return of large predators, we are starting to see bears, cougars, and wolves in Northern Illinois. And it gets people pretty excited when one of those larger animals shows up that no one alive today has seen themselves. They may have an ancestral record from a grandparent, a great-grandparent, someone that said they encountered one, but we ourselves, until 2002-ish, and maybe a little bit before, haven't encountered that. I'm going to present a little bit of the three predators, a little bit about those guys, their habitats and behaviors possibly, depending on our time, and adaptation requirements. For them to thrive, what would they need? Because we are not in a position in the state of Illinois and in many of these other locations, we've altered things enough that it may not be suitable. Okay, and then if time allows, you can share questions. I'll answer as many as I can before we get pushed out of our virtual room here. So for us, the way I set this up was historical species. We used to have elk. Without lots of contiguous forests, they moved out. So our deer that were kept in check, our white-tailed deer, have now become the largest ungulate, the largest grazing mammal, and it happens to be the state mammal of Illinois. But the elk have gone. Because the elk left, that's the lunchbox, the wolves left. So the wolves are looking around going, the biggest meal for the calories burned to take it down is leaving. We're going with it. Pressures from humans, yes. Hunting was not regulated yet until, into the 1900s. So pressures from people, they wanted to extirpate. They left. They didn't become extinct. They walked away. We had porcupines, which I think would be really great to see in the wild here, mountain lions. And of course, this little guy grows up to be a nice big black bear. So apex predators, as you can see on the screen, not necessarily a carnivore, but they're whoever should be at the top of their food chain in their current environment. Grizzly bears and humans dominate their food chain, but are omnivores. Currently in the state of Illinois, until we get fixed apex predators, humans are the top of the food chain. They tend to have no predators. An apex predator means no predators of their own. If you take out a human with a weapon, a human with a gun, a hunter, trumps an apex predator, as long as they're a good shot. But some people here believe coyotes are an apex predator. Coyotes are not an apex predator. In the middle of the United States, the central region, wolves still kill coyotes over territory. They're having a little bit of difference in the northeast, the Canadian wolves coming down and breeding with coyotes. That's a totally separate thing happening from what's happening still in the Midwest. Trophic level. Okay, a trophic level is the food chain. It's the food pyramid. Apex predators occupy the highest trophic level in the food chain. They sit at the top. They need the most amount of food to get the most amount of energy. So if a plant is a producer and a rabbit eats that plant, the rabbit's only getting 1/10 of the energy from that plant. 1/10. So it has to eat quite a bit. Well, then whatever eats the rabbit is only getting 1/10 of the rabbit's energy. And as you can see, as it goes up, and these animals are large, they have to consume more food. They are considered crucial, these apex predators, in the maintaining of their ecosystem's overall health. Now, when I was in college back in the 80s, early 80s, we started having this discussion as to getting wolves put back in Yellowstone. Now, we don't live anywhere near Yellowstone, but we knew it was a high issue with getting these wolves back in. The reason, though, so we thought, was only because grizzly bears were compromised. Grizzly bears were going into hibernation skinny. They were having small young. They weren't able to produce as much milk for their young, and they were coming out with a compromised young bears and compromised selves. So we knew that a dual apex predator system was crucial in Yellowstone. We had nothing to do with it. We were using it as a reason to study and to talk about wildlife management, and we knew there was conversation about trying this. Of course, people and ranchers have a different value, but the elk had become so abundant and were destroying lots of habitat. We weren't even thinking about that. We were totally focused on saving grizzly bears. Well, as it turns out that reintroducing wolves was the magic key to an entire fix to the trophic level. Now, I have a video. Many people may have already seen it. It's based off of a TED Talk by George Monbiot, and he did a TED Talk regarding cascades. He's a British gentleman, so when he says deer, you're looking at an elk because it is a species of deer. But I want you to watch this. One, it gives you a break from listening to me chatter, but it will fix in your mind the results of a food chain being put back to the way it needs to be, the things that can happen, and the things that, as students, we never even thought of how this was going to work out. And now people are using that example to repair the down in the Southwest with the subspecies. The Mexican wolves are a subspecies of the gray wolf. They're looking at it out in Zion National Park. With the flux of people in the 1940s, the cougars got upset with all the people. They left. So the deer wiped out the cottonwoods, the seedlings. They lost toads. They lost butterflies. So I want you to watch this. Listen carefully. And for yourselves and teachers, you can find this on the internet. If you type in wolves change rivers, it's 4.5 minutes. So you can access this by going on the internet. Now I have to mute my mic in order for you to hear this. I'm going to go to the next slide because it's the blank slide that it reminds me to do this. And I'm going to mute myself, and I'll be back on as soon as it's done.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. That the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds, of migratory birds, started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed. More pools formed. More riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Okay, so it looks like I'm back and I look like I'm on audio again. So what I wish I could see your faces. This is a video worth going back and watching again just because the visual is so beautiful. But isn't it amazing that even as close back as the 80s, for some of us that seems close, that we still didn't get it. We still didn't know that saving one thing was going to make such a difference in the overall picture. So we're still learning and we're still evolving with our understanding of wildlife. But one thing I do know is that people have the most responsibility, not just our managers and our wildlife managers, but we have to understand. I often share with my adult learners, you don't have to love or like everything in nature, but it is your responsibility to understand it. So moving on to that, to a little bit of a visual that'll help for those who understand food chains and food pyramids, I'm going to try this. Aha, got my little pointer. We do not, in Northern Illinois, we do not have this very top carnivore. This is that apex carnivore. We have coyotes, but we don't have a point. All right, we build up and then we're missing that last point that has everything to do with making this big circle again. And you can see why by the video, right? So that's important. All right, so now we're going to move into the fun stuff, these three big guys that keep popping up. I tell you what, all you have to do is have a bear pop up in a place there's never been a bear since the 1800s, and every single person gets it. It's kind of like when a huge thunderstorm is rolling in. It doesn't matter if you're a second grader, a fifth grader, a college student, a lawyer, our wonderful garbage collectors that work so hard to keep us from piling up waste. When a storm comes, we all get it. We all are amazed, and it's that moment when Mother Nature has everybody's attention. Same thing if you haven't had one of these guys in your area for a while. So we're going to go right into values as we approach these big guys, these apex predators. The conflicting values we have, primarily, it's our priority to consider safety for ourselves. If you are a mom or a dad, the safety for your children. Number one priority above wildlife would be concerns for safety. You might have a conflicting value where you're afraid, but you have an interest, an innate want to preserve these charismatic wildlife, these things that are so amazing and bring us awe. Even though the smallest things should give us just as much awe, when you get the big ones, it definitely draws our attention. It may be you have a need to sustain apex predators for the health of an ecosystem. Absolutely. We just saw that in the video. That should be a given, but we don't always understand why. And then I have a form that I'm going to show you a list of things. And I want you to think about what title describes your values for large predators. If you have large predators where you live, how you feel may be different because you have an understanding of existing with them. If you are somewhere near me or in an area where there aren't large predators anymore, you may have a different view. So let's go one more. So I know this is a lot. For the teachers and anyone listening, I hope it worked. Deb showed me how to load down in the file, down in the corner of your screen, there's a file. And there is a document in there that is this twice on a page. So if you want to follow up with students, you can print that. It'll be 2 per page. And these are the Keller wildlife values that you can use for continuing the discussion later. So somewhat quickly, you can be more than one. And they came up with these in '96. I graduated from college in like '87. So this isn't so old. Utilitarian, practical and material exploitation of nature. What if you're a family that gets some of your income because you hunt and trap and sell those materials to sustain yourselves? Naturalistic, direct experience and exploration. I also run a nature center on behalf of the University of Illinois Extension. I teach thousands of kids a year, so I have that need to have a direct experience, share it with people. The ecologistic, which by the way is not a word, I don't believe, when you punch it into word, scientific, systematic study of structure, function, and relationship in nature. That would be what we were talking about. That would be the video. That would be understanding that there's a role being played that has to be there whether we like it or not. The aesthetic, physical appeal, and beauty of nature. There's a lot of people that have posters of wolves, bumper stickers of wolves, wolves on keychains, wolves on coffee mugs, but they don't see them maybe right immediately in their neighborhood, and that might change something. The symbolicness. We use a lot of nature for symbols, especially large predators, similar to what I just said about the wolf. Humanistic, strong emotional attachment and love for the aspects of nature. Moralistic, spiritual reverence and ethical concern. So you understand parts and pieces, but you want people to behave appropriately. You want them to take into context that this was a living thing. So if you hunt, if you have a moralistic hunting view, you understand that that animal's feeding you and you're grateful to that animal, much like our Native Americans are. They know that everything is a gift, and that would be a moralistic portion to that. The dominionistic mastery, having to have control. A lot of the time that's also based on fear, like negativistic, a fear or aversion, alienation from nature. That often comes from an experience or passed down knowledge, and none of these are wrong. Every one of these is someone's value. I happen to be a multitude of these, and you could too. So for follow-up, if you want, you can pull that out of that file for later and go over these again. So I put this in here, and this is just as an example, and I'm going to read it out loud. I want you to think about those values I just showed you, and think about this gentleman's concern. And this is where you have to be open-minded. Your values might be different. It could be the same. And this was from 2014, written to our local IDNR director. Dumb tree hugger idea. This was, when we were trying to figure out what to do with these large predators coming in. What farmer wants to be confronted by a mountain lion in his barn, or have his children surprised by a bear as they play in the woods nearby? Reintroduce these predators, and the first human victim will not be far behind. There is a reason why our forebears hunted them and removed them from Illinois. And then he goes on to have concerns for hawks, and he would like them not to be protected because they kill chickens, which some people might be kind of humored by. But this is a gentleman who, one, might sustain his family with the sale of meat and eggs. This is someone who may have known the person who went out to their barn, and because we did have a mountain lion in a barn nearby here, and that's what really started this whole presentation idea for me. And the only mistake in here is that we're not reintroducing. They're walking in. We don't have a gate on our perimeter of our state. But this gentleman has a series of values, and we can't judge him because we don't know what those values are based on. But we should all be able to sit at the table and talk about it. So we're going to look at the animals. I know that's a high spot. I'm going to real quick, because I just had a quick question. I want to get used to this, because some I'll be able to answer, some I won't at the moment. Will introducing more species make to food chain different in these places? If this does happen, will the ecosystem drastically change on our standards? What I tell people here, we don't have wolves anymore. We don't have elk. We still have biodiversity. It's just the pieces have changed. That doesn't mean it's functioning correctly. We have an enormous number of white-tailed deer in the state of Illinois, because in the state of Illinois, they have no predator. A coyote can take a fawn off the ground. A coyote does not pack hunt like wolves do. They're kind of, they think they are, and then they all go 80 million directions, and they focus a lot on small game like rodents and rabbits. So our deer, the main consumer of our deer are people. So we need to continue to encourage possibly hunting in families. We're losing some of those hunters, and we're losing some of that need to get our food from the land, and the grocery store is just fine. It would happen slowly. If you reintroduce the Mexican wolves that they're reintroducing aren't at high enough number to make the change yet that has happened in Yellowstone. It would definitely create a different flow, but it would take time. It's not going to happen instantaneously. All right. So let me do a few more here, and I'll try to. Somebody was saying, hey Peggy, it's Kristen. Great presentation. If you are addressing this in your presentation, but how do you calm people who are so fearful that they can't imagine anything other than trapping or killing the large predators? That's kind of what we're going to talk about. That's where the values come in. That's where everyone at the table understanding values, Kristen, that it's okay that they're afraid, but you have to, you're not going to be able to maybe change that. and maybe you can't calm them down, but we have to honor that. And we'll talk a little bit more of that when we get to the cougars. And if I don't answer it completely, make sure you give me a heads up. So gray wolves, you know, recordedly it says they're last seen in 1859, but I was able to find a clipping from Sycamore, where I'm sitting right now, of a man in 1914. They didn't just all leave and never look back. They probably, as they left, tinkered with trying to get back in, but the pressures with people and the change with deforestation, we didn't have a lot of forest in Illinois to begin with. We were tall prairie. We still are the tall prairie state. We grow corn really well because it's a tall grass, and it's a tall grass prairie soil. But they were pushed out in a sense, and in a sense chose to leave. What little forest we had just wasn't enough to sustain them, and then when we were building new cabins and homes, things did change. Now, if you look at this, what I want you to notice, number one, is, oh, I didn't put a space right there, but 2002, the first male was shot during a coyote hunt. All right, and then we have 2005, another male was shot. This guy, the 2008, you would not get in trouble for shooting a wolf if it was very clear that you thought you had a coyote in your sight. However, this gentleman got in a little bit of trouble because he knew he shot a wolf, and he made sure everybody else knew it. So he paid a little bit of money for that, I believe. King County is my next county over, 2009. Now here's what I want you to notice. This is where I get excited. So it's been male from 2002 all the way to 2009, and look what happened in 2011. A male and female. All of a sudden there's a female in the picture, and they were found 4 miles apart. 4 miles is immediate with wolves. Okay, they're right by each other. And then look at this. I've had to add this slide. Female, 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 female. I did look today. I couldn't find it posted yet. A year ago, last April, there was another female killed, but it's unconfirmed for DNA purposes down in Dwight. Now, here's the thing. If we start paying attention to this is a critical trends assessment. You had all these young males. Now, the easiest animal to catch in any species are young males. Sorry, guys, but your mind is on other things, and you're running around like trying to figure things out, and you're easier to catch. The females are very leery. Plus, if they're of breeding age, they're very, very hard to find. This female that was tracked by radio collar, the signal was lost, and that would be a mortality signal. When the signal's not moving, the wolf is probably, or the animal that's collared is down, and was found dead. They couldn't figure out why. She'd been fed on by other scavengers. But the interesting thing is she's the one that had that male, and females and males don't hang out together for no reason. Wildlife is not random. We had basically the first possible pair in 2012 of wolves trying to find a place that was big enough to sustain a small pack. In the state of Illinois, we only have about 14% of the state, so it's been decided by researchers, that would even sustain a small pack. But these two were together, and that's pretty exciting. Let's see. I'm reading over here. Donna, the website, repeat the website, repeat my email address, I think is what maybe, and that's psdoty, psdoty at Illinois, all spelled out, .edu. The website for the wolves would be Wolves Change Rivers, if that was it. And then the word list, and Deb might have to send me a message as how to tell you, but there's a folder at the bottom of my screen. There's a folder in which I placed a document, and it's just a printable, simple document that has those values, 2 per page, 2 sets of values per page. And if there's a problem, Donna, use that psdoty at illinois.edu, and I'll just send it to you later, okay? Awesome. I wish we could do this whole day, but I need to keep moving. All right, so this was the female found 2015. Yes, it looks like a wolf, but here's the deal. If you find a wolf, take a picture of a wolf, get a footprint that might be a wolf, they will not confirm it unless you have a DNA sample. Because in the 90s, it was very popular to breed domestic dogs with wolves and get these pets. And a lot of those had more of a wolfy instinct. People let them go. It was really bad. And until they get a DNA sample and can prove that your wolf is really a wolf. You could even have one on a video camera. It doesn't matter. That's the one animal of these three. Now, if you have a trail cam at night and a cougar walks through and gets their picture taken, they will agree with you that's a cougar, if it's a cougar, because there are no cougar hybrids. Same with a black bear. But when it comes to a wolf, because there are so many traits that are similar to German Shepherds, even though German Shepherds are smaller, they can't say, yes, this is definitely till they do a DNA test. And that's science. That's important. So here's what I wanted to show you with wolves. Now, in the state of Illinois, as of January 1st, you cannot shoot for just no apparent reason a wolf, a bear, or a cougar. Prior to January 1st, wolves were the only protected species of the three. Bears and cougars had no ruling. They're doing this temporarily till they figure out society's wishes and needs and the values of everybody together in order to decide how to maintain and or manage a population if by chance they would get into the state and stay, which is going to take a long time. It's going to be very difficult. We aren't the state we were when they left in the late 1800s. But I wanted to point out to you, I talked to some people in Wisconsin, and Monroe County, this is the lowest known pack territory. Now those territories are firmer during breeding season. They'll mix and match their spaces. They'll even cross into each other's territory a little bit, the packs will, but breeding season, they're firm boundaries. And for us, where I live, basically we're 1, 2, 3, 4, and that fifth county would be Illinois counties. This is why they're trickling down. Now the funny thing is I'm not too far from Interstate 80. Before January 1st, because up here in northern Wisconsin, they've been delisted. There's hunting season on wolves. There's plenty of them. They are a wildlife population. They have to be managed. But because of their old home range and that they are starting to work their way down, north of I-80, they were considered threatened. Now, I-80 runs east and west. It's a highway. If they crossed the road and they were on the south side of I-80, now they were an endangered species. There's a huge difference in laws between endangered and threatened, and a huge difference in fines. You didn't want to harm a wolf at all, but if you did it on the south side of I-80, you're in big trouble. You were in kind of trouble on the north side if you see the funny in that. But it was kind of interesting that was different. But this is why. This is why they're stretching their boundaries. They've been saved, they've been preserved, and now they're becoming a fur-bearing, element. So here's a better example. I-80 is right here on the map. Isn't that interesting? So threatened, endangered. But now the whole state is protected. You can't, unless you are in harm's way from that animal, you may not harm them. This is the delisted area. This is where they have designated hunts because the numbers are really high. Now, for those of you that might upset you due to your wildlife values, I will share with you that they had out in Idaho, I wish I could pull the date up quickly for you, but they had this weekend free-for-all hunt on wolves. Tons of people showed up. And at the end of the weekend, tons of hunters allowed to let loose and, harvest, as we call it, wolves if they could. 30 coyotes were taken and no wolves. The wolves know what they're doing. If they get overpopulated and need to be controlled by number, you're more likely to find them. Okay, so, all right, there was a little bit of a glitch in my screen there. So here's something else I want to point out with wolves. And look at my time. I gotta move a little quicker. So Grundy, okay, the unconfirmed female that we're waiting to hear about, Livingston. Okay, Wisconsin's, that line's right here, and they've come down. But check this out. If you don't know Illinois very well, Grundy, Livingston, all right, down to Pike. This is the Illinois River Valley. Water is one of the critical habitat components. We all know this since we were little. Second graders, food, water, shelter, space. Every animal, living thing needs food, water, shelter, space. All right, we hear it through college. We understand that. A riparian area, that covered area along a huge river, is a travel highway. This is where they've come down to this far so far. And they've gone back up, or they've gone back over. Now, some wolves, when they lose a mate, will also go on a morning journey. There was one that was collared years ago by a gentleman, David Meek, who studied the wolves in Isle Royale. He had a wolf that lost a mate, and I wish I could tell you exactly female or male, but the one that was left alive went on what they call a mourning journey. She left Minnesota, went through Wisconsin, she went down Illinois, under the lakes, into Indiana, back across to Illinois. They knew where she was. Nobody reported her. Up Illinois, crossed a bridge into Iowa, made it back home within 10 miles of her home. It was 1,000-something miles. Nobody saw her. So when people say, I've not seen a wolf, I don't think we have any, I just say, oh, okay. Because they could or they might not. So let's move on to this sweet little beast. I say that because as much as I am always supposed to be the most objective person of the three, this is probably the one I least would enjoy running into in a wild situation. They're not predictable. Think about your house cat. They can be the sweetest thing on the planet and get a wild hair one day and jump you as you walk down the hallway and just grab your leg, right? So these guys are just really large cats. They have that same need to chase, that same interest. So let me see what we have here about mountain lions. Check it out. Remember I told you to look at the date on the wolves, 2002. Are we just now starting to pay attention in 2002? Or is there something else happening? I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just throwing it out there as a thought. So these guys, killed by train, bow hunter, again, these weren't protected. This was a really big deal in Roscoe Village in Chicago. Our cougars have all been DNA tested if they're passed, not on a trail cam, obviously, are all coming out of the Black Hills of the Dakotas. I'm gonna get in trouble if I try to think too much while I'm speaking here. So they're all coming out of the Black Hills. Why are they leaving? All right, and these are all young males. So think about this. You have a cougar who has a baby for 2 years. Mom's checking out, and then one day mom says, hey, guess what? I'm gonna have more kids. You need to get out. What? Bye, gotta go. Their home range is huge. Well, where am I gonna go? Doesn't matter, leave. So as the population has expanded, these animals who have huge home ranges have to travel farther and farther to get out of their home range. We have wonderful groups that are protecting them, and that's important for populations to get them back into their home range. However, the thing we have to consider is what happens when they go beyond those comfort areas where people are proposing they stay, and they come into Illinois, and they walk into downtown Chicago. That's what we had in Roscoe Village, and I have a picture that I'll share with you on that one. And this was the Morrison cat that I told you about. A mother was home alone with her children. I believe it was, they thought it was injured, but it walked into the barn. Her value is protection and safety for her family. And a lot of people say, well, then tranquilize it. Number one, our state at the moment had no way to tranquilize wolves, bears, or cougar. And here's the other thought. They're not endangered species. If you tranquilize the animal, where are you going to put it? Some people say a zoo. Zoos may already have them. How many can you put in a zoo before it's too many, and then where are you going to put the next ones? I'm just proposing thoughts. And, we almost lost power. We have that windstorm going on. And if you tranquilize it and you put it back north where it came out of, it's in territory again of its uncle, its cousin, its brother. Somebody's going to beat him up until he heads back south again, and you're starting that cycle. I'm just sharing thoughts. What do you do with an animal that's here because it was slowly working its way out to find its own territory? There's a couple on cameras. The Morgan one, that's Morgan. It's down on the Illinois River Valley. Here we go again. We're following. There's Pike again. The Illinois River Valley is a massive riparian, perfect habitat, food, water, shelter, space. And we have plenty of white-tailed deer in Illinois for food. All right, this is my favorite picture. This was in the Chicago Tribune. I call him Captain Awareness. Slightly funny, slightly. Here he is. Here's his hand. He has his service revolver ready, and he's looking for the cougar. I hope somebody's smiling out there, because I find this cougar is not, look at his tail's down, his head's forward, he's looking a little bit left for a way out. This animal has no interest in harming that officer, or he'd be already gone, but he doesn't know it's right behind him. So now this animal was shot. There was a lot of concern about that. But when you say big cat, something different in a very populated area, everybody comes outside to see. So now you have a very dangerous situation, a very stressed out animal, and a lot of possible human victims. It was a hard decision. And I understand both sides because the values. All right, here's the original home range, all of the United States. The light, it's hard to see, but it's this light taupey color. And now here's where they are. And right here, and I think my next slide will show you, is where they're all coming out of, and they're expanding their range. because they're saved. So here's our guys coming in. There's the one Morrison one's not even on here. So they're going, and they have been finding them. These are DNA tested. They know where they're coming from. They're going all the way over the top. Here's some. Some of these are coming in. They could come across a bridge in Iowa, right? They're not stalking us. They're trying to find habitat that can be their territory, their space. But we have so much agriculture. The southern tip, nice area for any of these three, and maybe up here in the corner, close to Wisconsin, but it would be very hard for them to sustain themselves healthfully. All right, so this is my reminder. I'm looking at my time. I'm sorry if this seems a little fast. There's a lot of information. This is a different example. We talked about the gentleman with the fear and the doministic values, possibly because he, was using chickens and eggs to serve as his family's income. Now this is the Cougar Fund. They are a really cool organization, and they are promoting cougars. And I want you to watch this, and then I wish I could converse with you. I want you to watch this and think about the values involved with the people who support this, because I think it's important. I'm going to mute my mic. I'll be right back. This one's shorter.
You will raise your right hand and repeat after me.
That I will faithfully execute
The office of President of the United States.
the office of President of the United States.
Neil, this is Houston, loud and clear. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
They don't know the number of wolves in Illinois, but they know there's none that have taken up residency. That female that was found dead with the male is the closest we've come to a pair, a small pack starting that we are aware of. Again, there's only about 14% of the states that could hold them. I really don't see wolves in the southern Illinois area till later on. I think that northwest corner is where we see it. Our state does not have, Donna was asking if we use DART administrated birth control. We don't have, this is just the beginning of this change, so we don't have anything like that, and that would be, it'd be a consideration. It'd be something that would be brought to the table that maybe they could do that. And I don't do any of the science. I'm bringing you information and relating it to wildlife values just to help people ease their way into, like we had the question about people's concerns. I try to take some of people's concerns and ease them and put them into the framework of values, so it all could happen. Oh, I love this. Somebody, Mrs. V, I feel like I know some of you already. Let me find it. I just clicked too far past it, I think. She said their school motto. I'm looking for it again here. Hold on. She's all excited. That's our school motto. We are Kenyon Woods and we dream big. That's awesome. Congrats. The state probably does track the animals, Donna, from state to state. I know that we'll talk about a little bit of that with a black bear and the knowledge with that. Okay, so really quick, just so you know, if you're out and about tracking, here's the things you need to look for. And again, a canine could be a huge dog. You're going to see toenail marks unless it's a show dog and the toenails are trimmed completely gone, or it's an animal that's wild and has traveled a long distance using the internet highway system. Thank you, President Eisenhower. So, because that's where all the, these animals that travel a long way could actually wear down there, depending on the surface they leave their track in. But if you see toenails, it's most likely canine. If you don't see toenails, but the pad, that front pad has this triangular shape. It's got a front lobe, one lobe here, two lobes on the heel part. That's a canine. Look at your dog at home. Sometimes you'll get a little ripple, a little extra bump right here. So now look at the feline track. We have two pads, two lobes on the top of the pad, three on the back, and no toenails. Still 4 toes, but no toenails. So that's kind of a giveaway there. All right. So real quick, let's do black bear, Ursus americanus. This guy is my last. He's my least concern. Wolves, not concerned. Bears, least concerned. Cougars, I'd rather not take my chances just because they're a little more obvious cat-like. So the bears are totally different. They are easily scared off, thank goodness. All of these animals, everybody always says, well, what are you supposed to do? You know what? Don't curl up in a ball and act like a rock, because bears like to play with rocks. Really, people have been saved in cougar encounters with a pocket knife and just lots and lots and lots of pokes. I'm only talking about that because I'm trying to just educate on the values, but it is something I get asked about. And let's see. Here we go. So black bears. So this was interesting. Again, they left the state, not enough forests, get a little busy. People were eating them, hunting them for food, and who wants to stick around for that? So here's some of your dates, but check this out. A black bear was found hibernating in a drainage ditch. Okay, this is down in Bureau County area. That's strange. Number one, to be a bear all alone. They very much like to stay in cahoots with others in areas. And then the interesting thing, a black bear was seen repeatedly in Joe Davis in 209. Now that's most likely a Wisconsin young male. The mom says you got to go. He's checking out Illinois. He doesn't know Illinois from Wisconsin, but he's going in and out. Now here's this 2010, a year after the one here first, same area. A mother and a cub were spotted. I can almost guarantee you, of course I can't guarantee you 100%, that was a kept pet. Number one, it was never seen again. And number two, females, which we have no set population of females in Illinois. There are, however, bears from St. Louis south in Missouri. Every county along the river has bears, but they have to be able to figure out how to cross the river into Illinois, which southern Illinois would be a great habitat for black bears again. They used to be there. But females will not go more than 10 miles from their mother. This bear was in the middle of Illinois, further up than the populations in Missouri, and disappeared again. Probably the black bear, the first one found semi-hibernating, because it did know what snacks and pop were, to pop that you drink. Probably same owner has some bears. Probably the father, maybe even of that young bear. But it's not, they more likely were pets because of their location. So you get these black bears. We had one in our state, in our county, right here in this county last year, and the bear came wandering through, most likely male, again, kicked out, spring, lots of attention. And I called the sheriff's department, said, if you need me to do any public relations, I'd love the opportunity. He called me back and he said, am I doing the right thing? Tell him, let the bear be a bear. I said, yes, the most important thing for this black bear is to get out of this state in one piece, because then the next one won't be so exciting. It'll just be another black bear. And that's how we have to slowly transition into anything with wildlife and people. And then he said to me, he said, I have one more question, Peggy. I said, what's that? And he goes, I called Wisconsin and they don't want it back. I said, well, they're like raccoons up there. These aren't endangered species. These are just apex predators that are very easy to see. They're large. They draw surprise. So he didn't quite understand why they wouldn't want him back. The bear worked its way back up. We never heard another thing about it. So we're going to assume that he made it back up in some area where he could find a place to start his own. This is the original home range of the black bear. It's huge. So it's not that they're coming back to take it back. They're not trying to reclaim it. They don't understand ownership. It's that whole Chief Seattle thing. They don't own it. You don't own it. They just live on it, and they have a social relationship that they have to attend to. All right. Here's the black bear. This is probably getting pretty old. See how close they come down into Illinois down here? We're right. I'm sitting talking to you from about right here, somewhere right in here. Of course we're going to. He wandered down, in, around, and then probably headed right back in. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. Now here's footprints. If you see these, I'm going to hold one up to my face. This is a rubber cast. If you see this in your yard, it might be a good idea just to pull in the trash and the hummingbird feeders and any cat food and go inside, right? Because he's going to be looking around. If you see this shape, but it's like this big around, you've got a skunk. They have very similar footprints, much different in size. So here's something I want you and I'll explain the context. A woman who was concerned about coyotes. I believe animals have a right to live. I just think there's something that needs to be done so that they don't kill an animal. She meant a pet, but you see the disconnect. We have a disconnect that we have to keep educating, and that's what we do with Extension. U of I Extension allows me to educate those people who need to understand more about wildlife, and so they can develop values based on all the information. All right, this one, I kept this because although Leopold was the founder of wildlife management, and he really had figured it out as he went along. He used to hunt wolves till he thought hunting wolves till they were gone would make more for the deer, and it really just messed up as he realized the whole food chain, the whole ecosystem, and his values changed. I thought it was interesting that this says the hope of the future lies not in curbing the influence of human occupancy, human population, which since 1933 has changed a little, right? It is already too late for that, but in creating a better understanding of the extent of that influence and a new ethic for its governance. Okay, so how do we socially, with values, approach these issues as communities? We should be putting into play large animal, how are we going to deal with it when it happens? What's the public relations going to look like? Let's educate ourselves ahead of time. We have to do it with coyotes too. Coyotes are very exciting because they are very adaptable and they've learned to do what they need to do to survive. So that's kind of interesting. Another one I put in here is, you can see in the 80 years since, we have seen great strides in conservation and species recovery, including deer, wild turkeys, coyotes, beavers, raccoons, river otters, and large carnivores. Countless sportsmen, conservationists, landowners, environmentalists, and natural resource professionals have all played a significant part in these accomplishments. Now, this was in response to the large predators before the law went into effect January 1st. Now we must focus on the next step of creating a better understanding and new ethics to support the future management and protection of large carnivores in Illinois. We have to understand the difference between preservation, conservation, and management. Out in Colorado, when we were talking about the cougar and the Cougar Foundation, I let you watch that cougar video and I let it be what it was. And it says, don't sweat the small stuff. So how do you say that to the family of Scott Lancaster? He was in Idaho Falls, Colorado, I believe, 1991, at the beginning of the Gulf War. He was a long-distance, bicyclist type person. He was jogging. His classmates saw him out the window jogging, doing his exercise. He was known for constant physical exercise, and a mountain lion killed him. How do you tell a family not to sweat that? Their values have been created by experience. There is a book written by one of the I think it was an NPR person, David Barron. I wrote it down. David Barron. The book is called The Beast in the Garden. The Beast in the Garden by David Barron. And it is the story of Scott Lancaster, and his relationship to that was how we view wildlife, how we view and how we deal with changes in wildlife, and it goes really in depth to everything that has to do with that. We have to really have plans in place, and we have to think about not turning it into making them human, if you will. So it's our responsibility. They were having trouble out in California. People were comfortable with cougars, and they thought, oh, we can live with these cats. But what they weren't doing was their job as managers. You should always make these animals afraid of humans. If they become too comfortable, they become very smart. All right, so air horns, wave big, scare them. This goes for coyotes, wolves, bears, cougars. It's your job to manage them so humans stay on the top of the food chain. Okay, this was for Illinois, but for everyone involved, birds in the United States, depending on where you're located today, but within the United States, the federal government owns all the birds. So anything done to birds, you'll have a little trouble, minus starlings, house sparrows, and rock doves, pigeons. Those are not protected, but everything else is protected. And then also mammals. Mammals are the state's responsibility, so the state of Illinois decides what happens to their mammals, including these apex predators. Colorado would take care of theirs, Pennsylvania, Washington State, everyone takes care of their own as far as regulation on mammals. On this slide, somebody was asking about a website for Illinois. You can learn more about these guys, these 3 large predators here at the wildlife. This is Living with Illinois Wildlife. But a lot of these animals are the same animal and have the same personalities in your state or area. And you could go to your local Department of Natural Resources to get updates usually on what kind of animal numbers. Why are birds property of the federal government? Airspace, actually it's, the Endangered Species Act and the Migratory Bird Act, because birds can travel long distances easier. They went ahead and made it federal, is my understanding. Someone else might be able to email me later and change that thought. But basically, in Illinois, over 90% of our birds migrate. So if we owned them, we would be trying to pass our ownership and trying to tell other states what they could do and not do with our birds. So by being federal, they can lay the law down. So Donna's great. She goes, encouragement not to be afraid. The thing is that I like to tell people, don't fear wildlife, but respect it. Understand it, educate yourselves so that you can be the best person at the table, whether you're in 2nd grade now, in college now, in high school now, part of an organization. You have to be able to sit at the table and agree to disagree, or we're going to get nowhere. And it has to be, humans have to come first. We are the higher thinkers, but we also have to help people and value people. No matter what our first reaction might be to how they're thinking, we have to value that that's their true feeling, and we have no control over that. We can only talk about it. I don't think I'm saying now. I'm getting probably very tired. I shared something. I just want to share something to lighten it, and I have like a couple minutes. But this was what I did for Illinois. With this, you would report to whoever is your state IDNR guy. I skipped that slide because it would be different depending on what state you're from. All right, I can go back one really quickly. Basically, it's somebody at IDNR. In this case, the new gentleman is Doug Dufford. His wife was at one of my presentations of this. I found out after, so we did okay. Photos, tracks, casts, carcasses for wolves. Has to be a carcass for them to give you a definite ID. Different organizations for overall larger groups. North American Bear, the Cougar Fund, Cougar Network, International Wolf Center. That's where I got some of my data. Now here's the one I wanted to share with you. We have these little least weasels, and everybody's all worked up about these apex predators, but this little guy stands all of this tall. Okay, what is that, 6 inches? He has the strongest jaw strength to body size in the world, second only to the Tasmanian devil. His jaw strength to body size is greater than an African lion. His home range is 34 to 37 square acres. He hunts day and night. He rarely will grow old enough to see his first birthday because he just wears himself out. He is the least weasel. And I always giggle that everybody's afraid of these huge predators, but this guy scares the tar out of me. So I just wanted to just lighten it just a little bit and bring it into perspective. They can do a heck of a number on your chicken coop, but they love chipmunks and other small rodents, things like that. So they are definitely a weasel. And I'm going to end with this slide. This is one of my favorite artists. I'm ending because it's almost time, and also because I want you to take away, let me go back, let me find my page of notes. Here we go. As I read these, look inside that footprint and see if you can find the wolf looking back at you. There's a full wolf standing inside that footprint, and it's one of my paintings that I love from Bev Doolittle. So did you walk away with my 3 things I asked you to? 1, everybody has a set of wildlife values that is identifiable by their personal experiences or beliefs. And in order to communicate, we need to value those. 2, biodiversity is at its best. It's always could be there with different components, but biodiversity is at its best when all parts of the food chain are in place and balanced. And number 3, we are socially and ultimately the managers of wildlife. All right, Thank you so much. I've been so excited about doing this. It's been crazy. And if you have questions, again, psdoty@illinois.edu. And I think oh, bell's going to ring. I lost some people due to bells. Archives. These should be archived if you need to come back and hear more. I hope everyone got something from that today, and I've been very excited to do this for you. So thank you so much. I have no idea how to get out of here right now, so you'll see me until you go away, and I'll figure out how to close out. Thank you so much.